Welcome everyone. Welcome all our viewers out there on Post-Courier Online. Those who follow our platforms all on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you have YouTube as well. Welcome to the 9th edition. Today we have a very special guest, or I'd rather say a number of guests here in our current podcast for this particular session. We have our favorite friends from the ICAC. I say favorite because of the fact that the fight against corruption, and let me say, Independent Commission Against Corruption. The fight against corruption is not one that's only fought by one particular organization, but it is everyone's business. Us in the media, we say that in terms of newspaper distribution, circulation is everyone's business. The same also applies to corruption. It is everyone's business. As we put out information out to the general public, it is our role to ensure everyone is informed, just as well as it is also the Independent Commission Against Corruption's role to ensure that the fight against corruption is one that is consistent and persistent, I think. I have with me a very special guest and his directors. We have Thomas Elu. Thomas Elu, MBE, DPS, QPM. I'll have to find out all those definitions later on. Mr. Elu is the acting commissioner of the Independent Commission Against Corruption. His role, he provides strategic leadership and oversight of the commission and administrative and operational functions, ensuring that ICAC fulfills its role, its constitutional mandate in preventing, reducing, and combating corruption in Papua New Guinea. Most of his career to specialist work in investigations, prosecutions, and I think this is interesting for everyone to know that he was instrumental in developing and delivering the police prosecutions training manual at the Bomana Police College. His final appointment within the RPNGC was as Assistant Police Commissioner of Crimes. In 2017, he served as the acting administrator of the Southern Highlands Province for 18 months. He later played a pivotal role in ICAC's formative years, serving as interim ICAC chairman from 2018 to 2023, guiding the institution and its establishment before its full operationalization. Mr. Elu holds a postgraduate diploma in forestry and law prosecutions. Welcome, Acting Commissioner Thomas Elu. And also I'd like to, our other guests also are the directors, Senior Forensics Accountant, Ms. Grace Moon. Could you help me with that one? A unique Papua New Guinean name, a surname I would think. Munkaje, thank you. And I also have Ms. Dallas Henderson. Thank you for being here with the Acting Commissioner. We are here at a very, like I said, a momentous time where we now, the International Anti-Corruption Day has been around since 2003. It was through the UN Convention against corruption. So it's been around for a really long time. And I also take note that, Acting Commissioner, you've had some columns that have been run with us as Post-Courier in our partnership in the lead up to the International Anti-Corruption Day. And I had some interesting thoughts that you said that corruption has been around for a while. It's been around globally, of course. But it's interesting that, if you could just start us off with that, your view of corruption, your personal reflections on it, because I read your first column. It was very interesting to see how you were first exposed to this. But I also like that whole conversation around the fact that corruption wasn't spoken about back in the day, in the early formative years of this country. But then at some point, it was almost taboo to talk about it. But now it's gone to a point where it's on everyone's lips at the moment. If you could just start us off with some of those reflections.
Thank you. Let me start by way of setting the scene, if I can. I think you have already covered my background, most particularly. This is 50 years on. I'm still fighting corruption. I've been fighting corruption all my life, particularly in the RPNGC. And I have come across a lot of instances of corruption, and I can share some examples during our conversation. As you quite rightly pointed out, corruption was not spoken about immediately after independence. And until around about the late 80s, 90s, when the momentum of corruption started to be widespread, and as you said, it's on everybody's lip these days. For me, I try to evaluate the pre-independence and post-independence period. Like in the pre-independence period, we had the colonial administration that in a way shaped our public service, the leadership at all levels, from politics right down to the public service, and we had good systems and processes, good governance, and on top of that, we had very, very honest leaders, both political and public service. We had very, very good systems. People, the leaders then, both in politics and even despite their qualifications, most of them were not highly educated as those today. But the important thing there is that they were very, very honest, very transparent, very accountable in everything they do, and they provided a platform of good governance that was from colonial era and immediately after independence. So 20 years on after independence, that is when everything started to rattle up. And that is our public service, our politicians, they have, their interest. Like in my view, politics has tentacles almost everywhere now. Public servants have become simply rubber stamps to carry on or do things that they know very well that they're not supposed to be doing. They don't stand up to the challenges against our leaders. If they tell them to do the wrong things, unfortunately, these days they've just simply become rubber stamps. So they kind of weaken the good governance, and which lays the platform. And today's development challenges adds another form of, it exacerbates the situation. Unemployment, law and order, our general population are living in, they're semi-educated, they're living in communities, and they're vulnerable to the perception of corruption. So these development changes and challenges have also added, the challenge into how corruption has transformed this country. It is very sad to say that corruption has somewhat trickled into all systems of government, starting from politics right down to the communities. So people these days really have become great victims of the evils of corruption. So I can safely say this. I've been around for a long time. I've been fighting corruption all my life. And this is the perception that I drew, the value between our past leaders, our past managers, to today's. So it's very, very sad to say that, in today's world, it is the elite Papua New Guineans that are actually involved in the evils of corruption. Our communities and the little people may be facilitators or recipients, but those that are highly qualified and they can identify the gaps in the systems, they manipulate those gaps to ensure that they get the best maximum benefit out of what they can. And that is, people can have their own views, but I have a very strong view in this because I've been fighting corruption all my life.
A nostalgic moment, or heading back to the popular quote by Semakere, who referred to corruption as being endemic and systematic. I think you're correct that it happens from the very top, and everyone looks to the top. I think we're a society that always looks to our leaders. So if our leaders can do it, everyone at the bottom think that they can do it too as well. So because it is now endemic, it's systematic, then it calls for the creation of somebody's. Everyone sitting there, there's always this thought about just moving to other points that you will be covering on. Everyone talks about, so why ICAC? We had the OC. We have other bodies that have been created. Also within the police, there are already divisions or departments with it. Why does this need ICAC for everyone out there who's like listening to you talk, and you and your directors? Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. For me personally, there was no need for ICAC if all systems of government, particularly the law enforcement, if the police were doing their job well, if the Ombudsman Commission, the Public Prosecutor's Office are doing their job well, I don't think, of course, corruption will certainly be a subject that we need to look into as a country. but because the systems in those law enforcement agencies have somewhat, corruption has trickled into them. And that's why the public are not getting the type of service that they expected from the law enforcement agencies. So the momentum against establishing corruption became stronger and stronger because of the public call and our stakeholders and everyone else out there. They needed an institution that should stand strong and be able to address corruption, because all other systems are kind of falling apart.
So would you say you are the last line of defense?
I suppose so.
Wow, that's a big statement coming from you, Acting Commissioner. So ICAC's role now. So now ICAC's role, where has the journey been taken, or how far has it gone? Because we have a lot of impatient Papua New Guineans out there, as you would appreciate too as well. Yeah.
Definitely. Yes, ICAC, I was the first interim chairman in 2018. So during my interim period, I was instrumental in passing the organic law. And fortunately, it was passed in Parliament in 2020 with the figures of 96-0. In other words, there was kind of a signal of a strong political will. That to me, I kind of, I'm still skeptical about the political will, because the way I see things at the moment, like politicians pass the law and expect someone else to, implement those laws. Without political will and a strong leadership at the top, definitely all else will crumble. So here we are, we have established an institution to fight against corruption. And ICAC is in the forefront of that. Without political will, without all the support that we need in order to get this new creature off the ground, to be able to stand strong on its feet and be able to address issues of corruption throughout the country, I'm scared to say that if that, the type of political will and, the support from the public, of course, the fight against corruption, as you quite rightly pointed out, it's not only one person or one organization's role. It requires every hand on deck, every children, every man and woman of this country must stand up and be counted if we are to make any impact in the fight against corruption. If we leave it to individuals or we leave it to organizations to fight corruption on their own, unfortunately, we will certainly fail.
And you made a big point talking about how the political will doesn't only end at Parliament. It continues in everyday operation and function.
Yes.
That's something I know, and I know everyone out there knows how politicians tend to forget that it's not just passing of laws, like you said. Then let's come back to the most simple forms of corruption. I think let's look at some of the, because while people say they know corruption, but a lot of people don't actually know what it is, because it exists in their lives in an everyday capacity that they think that just doing this, it's always this gesture somewhere or through here somewhere that always brings out this sort of corruption. But what is corruption? How can we define it? Yeah.
Corruption in law, legally, it does not have any definition. Because in my view, it's about anything and everything that we do in our daily lives. Of course, we kind of term it as being dishonest in what we do. We get things that we're not entitled to, and then we term them as corruption and bribery and all of that. But in my view, after having been in the forefront in the fight against corruption, corruption is deeply rooted in the family to start with. You have a lot of children running around the streets. You have a lot of broken marriages. You have a lot of children coming out from broken homes. And then, that is where the corruption starts, from within family. And then if you're not brought up properly by your parents, definitely, your going is going to end up somewhere. And unfortunately, corruption could, affect you as an individual. So that's my view. So when you look at the discussions about corruption in Papua New Guinea, everyone is looking at the Parliament House. They reckon that all our politicians are corrupt, all the public servants are corrupt. Yes, in some ways. But when you look at the corruption, it's almost our daily activities, both within family and outside. You see little things like people spitting out betel nut from the bus. This is corruption. It's got a corrupt attitude. That's why there are laws that say that you shouldn't be doing that. And here we are. Papua New Guineans tend to think that, oh, this is not a corrupt practice. In actual fact, you're showing to everyone else that you are morally corrupt. So corruption is in almost anything and everything. You look at the education system, you look at the forestry sector, you look at the fisheries sector, it's all spread out. People are no longer, careful about their attitude. Attitude is the biggest challenge that we have. Until and unless we change our attitude. Corruption is not only, let's not, say, oh, it's only been done by, people at the higher level, leadership and all of that. It comes right down to the, attitudes of the communities as well. A lot of people are doing things like selling betel nut in places where they're not supposed to. So little things like this, we tend to think that that's not corruption, but in actual fact, it portrays a sick society, which is riddled with corruption. So, let's be fair. Sure. And hopefully we can be able to address the root causes of it. Sure. And it starts from the family. It starts from our attitude, both in-house and outside. Everywhere we go, how we conduct ourselves. Public servants coming to work not properly dressed. They're coming to work late. They're coming to work chewing betel nut. These are all corrupt practices in little forms, but they build up to, bigger things if we don't address them properly. Sure. That's the way I see corruption.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of work you guys have ahead of yourselves. Okay, then I bring it to this other part. Like, so you've said that corruption exists at those simplest levels, and then now where does it translate to? So obviously, if everyone were, charged for being corrupt at those levels, everyone would be in jail right now. Obviously, we know that that's impossible. So when do I get to a level where now I will really get in trouble with the law?
Yeah, it's a good question. The thing is, like everything that we do, if there is elements of corruption in our conduct, the way we do business, the way we behave ourselves, then that is when you have come into conflict with the law, whether it's an offense under the Police Act, or Criminal Code, or an offense under the Organic Law. So that is when people do things that they're not supposed to do in their normal daily activities, both within the family environment, plus those particularly in office spaces where they perform their duties. So the sad thing is this. Every corner you turn, there's a lot of people talking about corruption. But sadly enough, no one tends to be reporting it to the authorities. So that's the obstacle that we face. If we can have a society that is willing to address corruption from the roots, we need more people to expose corruption. Come to the authorities, come to ICAC and speak out. Now, for me, why do we have to have a law to force us to report corruption? It's really not necessary. It has to be, an obligation on every citizen that we have to make it our business to report, despite whatever the results are. Not only report, be able to support the authorities to bring those perpetrators to court and hopefully secure a conviction. That is the fight against corruption. So we must always remember that if you want to fight corruption, you must always remember that corruption does fight back.
Sure. And inspiring. Thank you so much. And thank you for your service in that respect. I like that whole concept. It's very confronting to know that when you fight corruption, it fights back. Right. You mentioned betel nut. This is to break it down for all of you. That arrogance with betel nut. Then it also cuts across now to culture. So the tendency for people to believe that, no, I can chew betel nut because it is in my culture. Sure. Then it brings us to this other big thing, and you all know it, the one-talk system. Sure. So because we're talking about that day-to-day thing, the one-talk system is also one of the biggest problems, but it's also part of our culture. And there's arguments out there that, oh, but then it's my one-talk, so I'm helping him, versus, no, but it's corrupt in what you're doing. How do people discern or know the difference, whether they're helping family in need, is a family in need, or they're just messing up society. Like you said, it's creating chaos. It's creating a very bad society for the future of our children. Yeah.
It's very interesting. Like for me, I start off with betel nut. Betel nut traditionally has a purpose, and that is when a friend comes home or customary obligations, betel nuts are used for those purposes. Unfortunately, it has been seriously abused. It's no longer addressing, what the betel nuts are actually for in our society. People are now using it, carelessly using them, spitting everywhere, and it doesn't reflect a society that respects traditions and the way things are done. So, betel nut, in so many ways, has been abused to an extent where it's become a corrupt, practice for everybody.
True.
Coming back to one-talk system, for me, one-talk system is a very good thing for Papua New Guineans. Like we come from a culture where we need to be together. When somebody tries to pay for a bride price, for example, you need your one-talks, you need your relatives to support you. So one-talk system, in a way, it's good. Again, it has been abused. It has been used to, for corruption purposes, bribery, and all these other things. So until we leave those things in their initial context, they are good for us. But if we start to abuse them, it becomes a serious problem.
Yeah, people may be wondering why we're talking about betel nut, all these little things, but it's evolved from, because you're all guilty, mind you, most of you, because you always talk about Wampla Buaikam, all those sort of things, and then now it's evolved, not just betel nut. These are the key red flags, I'd say, when someone says collar money, betel nut, buai blue, lobaim buai blue, or bus fare blue. Like the most simple things have been abused in this context. So like Papua New Guineans should be understanding and picking up. They do pick them up, but they're all confused. And before I get to Grace, because that's where some of the real digging in comes through, just your thoughts, or what would be your message to Papua New Guineans out there? Just if you could look quickly, just while we're at this topic about a thing that's closely knitted in all our family, the fabrics of the family. And I think we've gone from a point where we're being family in clans to now we are interprovincial families. Our one-talks have now expanded to even the rest of the Pacific or the rest of the world. I could even call Dallas my one-talk too now. Skin color doesn't matter. So just your message to everyone now, just their thoughts, like how far can you go for your one-talk? How far are you willing to go? And are you willing to burn bridges? Are you willing to get in trouble, or are you willing to be put behind bars? Just your message to everyone.
My message is very simple. We do not have to destroy this very good culture that we have in terms of like the use of betel nut and of course one-talk system. If we can stop abusing it to an extent where it trickles into decision making, it trickles into contract awarding, it trickles into other issues that where corruption thrives. So if we can be able to restrict, the good cultures to what it is meant for, then certainly, it will help us. But if we start to abuse them, definitely the country is suffering right now because of the abuse of these little things. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Acting Commissioner. And everyone, you heard it now. One-talk system is not bad. We all grew up in it. It's part of our life for generations. I think we're all abusing it. I think that's the message that we have. Coming over to Grace, forensic accountant. We all watch CSI and all these other programs. When you hear the word forensics, we know that that's his job. But to hear that an accountant is a forensic accountant, just for the simpleton out there, the Joe Blows out there, what is your job basically in ICAC as a senior forensic accountant?
Basically, so the forensic part just comes from, we have to prepare financial evidence that has to be at a standard where it can be admissible in court. So that's really, it's a fancy term for investigative accounting.
Okay.
So we're not looking at dead bodies, but we're tracing numbers and figuring out where they're spending the money, where they're hiding. And so it's a good question. Often when I say this is what I do, they often think, oh, are you doing CSI type stuff? And I said, no, it's the good old Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, true.
That's where our tool set are.
Yeah. Okay, so then it comes back to now this other important point. Everyone keeps talking, everyone, mind you, they talk about it, Papua New Guineans. Enforcement. Okay, so you're the forensic accountant, and now today, most of the common corruption issues that pop up in this country involves numbers, obviously, like you said, and the numbers never lie. I think that's what the saying has always been around for a long time. People forget that in every transaction there is a trail somewhere, right? A paper trail. So if you could just run for everyone, what does that mean in accounting?
So that's a good question. For every transaction we do, sometimes we're colloquially known as bean counters. I'm quite offended when people call us bean counters.
Okay.
But for every transaction, it's a simple principle of there's a debit, there's a credit, meaning there's a money going in and where's the money coming out from. And so when we are in the forensic accounting team, so there's 5 of us, when we're tracing transactions, we're looking at where's the source of that income. Is it from your salary? Do you have a business on the side? Is it legitimate sources? And then where are you spending it? And if you're spending it, is it on legitimate expenses that you have as day to day? Or if you're a business, is it for, let's say if you're a kaiba, are you buying food and paying your staff? Or what are you doing with that money? And the real part happens when you see the source minus where you have applied it. And then there's that component of unexplained wealth. And that's really where you are living and spending beyond your legitimate income. And so it's tracing through that. And often they do say numbers don't lie, but numbers can be concealed.
Okay, good one. Yeah.
And that's where we have to come in. And so when people are, as Mr. Elu mentioned earlier, when you have people that are learned professionals that are also taking part in this is not your everyday petty criminal that's stealing the bilum at the bitternup market. These are people that are highly educated, they understand government systems, they understand law, bits of the law, and they also understand how our financial systems work. And so they know how to get the paper trail approvals and also conceal it in our formal financial institutions. And so our job is to go and trace that. And it's a task that ICAC doesn't do on its own. We do it in collaboration with the banks. Because our first sort of source of evidence for us as forensic accountants, a primary evidence is bank statements. And so we need to build those relations with the banks. And of course, you also have to understand that banks operate from a commercial sector, private sector. And so with what's happening with the global economy as well as Papua New Guinea as well, there are challenges for them to recruit enough officers in, let's say, the anti-money laundering teams that help us in tracing these transactions. So as much as I would like a bank statement of a politically exposed person to be returned in 5 days, that's just not possible. And so we have to build those relations with the banks. So like currently, for us to get bank statements, we give them 5 weeks. And then if we have to get traces of transactions where they actually have to go and pick out vouchers and consult other correspondent banks, go through our CAT system, that takes time. So we usually give them 10 weeks. But even then, with the 10 weeks, you're talking about 2 months and 2 weeks. They still ask for extensions. And we can't apply all that pressure because we're not the ones that are going to fund their offices. So there's these challenges that we have to deal with. But having said that, the banks have been really supportive and helpful. Every time if we do have a case that's pressing and we say, look, our normal processing time is 5 weeks for bank statements, 10 weeks for traces, can you do it in 7 working days? And they can drop everything and help us. And that's because of the good relations and partnerships. We have to go in person because end of the day, we're operating in Papua New Guinea. You can't just send emails and be like, oh, I'm the ICAC.
Sure.
Can you respond quickly? You have to go and build those relations and understand what their challenges are, explain what our challenges are, and then you can get a good working relation. So I think I probably said so much, but
No, it's
I think
fine.
it's about building those relations because Papua New Guinea is a face-to-face culture.
Yeah.
If you've ever sent an email, you'll know that you'll never get a response
True.
until you've established a face-to-face connection, or the person you email, someone else knows them. Then they'll mention to them that, hey, there's that email you need to respond to. So it's all about working in collaboration. We can't trace, a 5-man team can't trace all the transaction. This year alone, we've traced over 500,000 transactions.
Oh, it's a lot.
That's a lot, but there's still so much to be done.
True. And I think it comes back to saying that if this example, if Peter is out there in Mendi right now, and he listens and okay, he's watching this and he's saying, oh, so you picked up some transactions, so go and arrest him and go and get him now. It's not possible just to do that, because there's a lot of arguments going that, okay, so ICAC is here, it's another fancy organization that isn't going to really arrest anyone. When do people see arrests, and what's the investigation process they involved in that front? Yeah.
Maybe
Yes, please.
chip in here. I think for me, we have a very transparent system in place. So, for example, if a complaint is lodged, my experience with the police, they lodge a complaint at a counter, then the constable on duty picks the file up and it becomes a personal thing. And he walks away with it, whatever he does or she does, then no one tends to track, what they're doing. And then if that happens, it opens the vacuum of where corruption can come in. So in ICAC, we have developed a system where corruption, any complaint that comes in is properly assessed by the assessment team to ensure that that complaint is genuine. It has the substance. Like you have people, I think instances where people use the authorities for their own personal interest. Like I hate you, so I go and lodge a complaint. So it has the provisions in the organic law, gives us this mandate to screen all the complaints to make sure that the complaints that have come are genuine. And then from the assessment team, it goes to the ED, Executive Director Investigations. If they make a recommendation for the case to proceed by way of investigations, and if the case does not have any substance, then they make the recommendation for the case to be closed or sent back to the authorities that, like the police or the Ombudsman Commission if it's a leadership issue. That's what the assessment does. And then they don't make the decision there and then. They will forward it to the commission, which consists of the three of us. Say, for example, if this case they recommend for investigations, it has to be endorsed by the three of us. We'll have a look at everything that they have put together and decide whether this case is genuine for investigation. So if we decide that the case must proceed by way of investigations, it goes back to the ED, then assigns it to a senior investigator. So the investigation goes ahead and does their work. After compilation of all the evidence, and if they are satisfied that, oh yes, there is strong evidence for us to arrest someone. So it comes back to the same system. It goes back to the ED with those recommendations from the investigators, and then the ED doesn't make the decision. It comes back to the commission, the three of us. We must be satisfied that, of course, all the elements of the charge has been, it's all on file, the case is watertight. Then we say, okay, go ahead and do the arrest. So that's the system that we have.
Okay, thank you for bringing that up. I'll just ask a quick one now, a segue quickly. So that means ICAC straight to the courts, or ICAC police and the courts, since you brought up that important point about the constable being a law unto himself. Right? I mean, he's empowered by the law.
Yeah, well, the system, the organic law provides that the ICAC has the powers to arrest anyone who has committed a crime or corrupt conduct. But we don't have, unfortunately, Section 3 of the Arrest Act, which provides that power to the police. Like the policeman can arrest someone who is committing an offense, about to commit, or has committed an offense. That power is not given to ICAC. So I'm really looking forward to ensure that the organic law is amended to ensure that that power is given to us, so that we can, exercise the same power.
Will that be a game changer for you?
It will certainly. So we're looking forward maybe to have the law amended so that ICAC is given the clear power. The practice is we go by way of warrant of arrest. So it's like a citizen arrest. And in the meantime, I think we've got about 7 arrests so far that we have done since we took office 4 months ago. So we've got a good number of cases that have been, progressed through the system that I've just explained. And I think I'm quite comfortable to say that, ICAC is not defunct like many were saying in the newspapers lately. They said, oh, ICAC is a paperless, it's a tiger, paper,
paper tiger,
paper tiger,
True.
you name them. But I must assure our people, our Papua New Guineans, that ICAC is currently operating and operating well. We have restored the leadership. We have restored, the systems and processes. Our biggest challenge is capacity.
Yeah.
Like we have only 12 investigators, for example. We have 5 forensic accountants. So we need money, we need resources, we need office space. We cannot, the office space that we have, we cannot be able to, recruit more people. So these are stumbling blocks that we're currently facing.
Coming back to you, Grace, and Mr. Elu has mentioned the paper tiger. Okay, you are a tiger in some form or sense. But then also the mere presence of a tiger can strike fear in anyone to do something. That's where prevention comes in, I think. And as an accountant, you also keep people in line to stay within the laws of in how you disperse funds, etc., etc. So gathering all of this, I know that ICAC too has a role to educate, has a role to prevent, because prevention costs less to fix than actual, the problems that come with corruption. Corruption is very expensive to fix. Just your thoughts on that. What is the role in prevention in terms of ICAC as an organization? Yeah.
Maybe I can help with this one, and then you can ICAC has 2 parts to its mandate. One is the investigations and prosecutions, and the other core function is the prevention and awareness. So I think as I speak, the team has been almost everywhere, and we're doing awareness to the communities, to civil societies and people out there. So we have tailored messages whereby we discourage people from being involved in corruption, and the support that they need to provide to us so that we can collaboratively work together to address the issues of corruption. Prevention is an area that we're still working on. So our vision is to save the next generation of Papua New Guinea. So we will be targeting the schools, starting from the elementary school right up to the universities, with the hope of winning young minds that have not been affected by corruption. Another prevention aspect is we have an MOU with the NRI. So NRI, they're the specialist researchers. So part of our mandate is to conduct researches into policies and the laws, to systems of government, to ensure that if there are any gaps that are identified during the assessments, then we can make recommendations for the changes in those policies or in those laws to try and eradicate corruption. So, yes.
Grace?
Yeah, I think Mr. Elu covered a lot, and I think that's what makes ICAC different from other law enforcement agencies, because usually you're one or the other. You're either a regulator or you're an enforcer. For us, we're lucky enough through our organic law that we are both. And so what me and the paper tigers are doing, that's that's the reactive. After things have already been done, and we have to go and find out what they've done. And then the prevention arm is the proactive arm. And that's where, as we were starting in the beginning of this discussion, where we're trying to not just change reforms at the policy level, but down to the mindset of the people. Because we can do all this great work, but if the mindset of the people, we're not touching the people, like what we're doing today with awareness, then this problem will continue. If people continue to raise their children without giving them the good values, the good Melanesian values that a lot of us were raised on and our ancestors survived for many thousands of years on, that we've lost along the way. At ICAC, we're hoping through that prevention arm to remind ourselves that it's not something new. And one talk system, often people who are not from our culture might think, oh, it's a culture of bribery. But it's not. It's a culture of togetherness. In the Western world, they have the dole system. In Australia, they have Centrelink. If you're unemployed, the government gives you money to help you get back on your feet. Here, we don't have that. We don't have that privilege. And that's where your one talks come in. Your one talk is your insurance. Your employer might not give you insurance, but your one talk will. But it comes from, you have to raise your children to also know that your loyalty is not to your one talk, it's to the country. And that's difficult because we come from a very collective society. And so when you're born, you're more associated with where you're from instead of, no, I'm from the country. It's not from the specific village. It's about, I'm from Papua New Guinea. That mindset has to come in first. But I find that many times from childhood, we're ingrained about where you're from. CIPICs will say, oh, I'm a proud CIPIC and, you know, I can do whatever I want. You know, there's different mindsets that we all know that are stereotypical, but it's up to us to break that sort of mindset and remind everyone that one talk system, while good, you have to remind yourself that the duty is for the greater good of the country, your country, not your tribesmen, not your one talk. And so if your one talk is asking you to do something that you know is not right, you have to say no or report it. A part of our culture, apart from one talk system, is about humility. That is a very Papua New Guinean, very Melanesian value. And so if you're a new kid on the block, if you want to work, get everyone to work with you, your job is not to go around and tell everyone. And I think that's not what ICAC's doing. We're not going around telling everyone, you haven't done this, you haven't done that. It's really more, hey, you've done this over this period, but we have a solution now. We think there's some gaps. Do you want to work with us? And so we've got MOUs that we've been working on. So currently we've got 4 MOUs that's with FASU, so that's the Financial Analysis Supervision Unit at BPNG, otherwise known as our Financial Intelligence Unit. We've also got it with Immigration, ICA, and we also have it with IPA, Investment Promotion Authority, as well as Customs. And so those are MOUs that have been signed, but we're also in the pipeline with others, with IPNGC, the Office of Public Prosecutor, with the IRC, as well as the Auditor General's Office. And so we're reaching out and we're building that community so that we can share, although we have a little bit of everyone's powers, as Commissioner Elu rightfully pointed out, there's limitations to some of these powers. It still rests with these constitutional bodies where that's their core power. And so in order to work together, we have to come up with these MOUs. So we've been out to a number of provinces to create awareness to other public servants and the public out there that this is our role, and this is if you see corruption, if you want to report it, these are the processes. We've got a complaints line and an email, and this is how you can get in touch with us. So it's really, we're targeting all levels of society. Coming back to what Semekere said, systemic problems, we can also influence policy about how these systems need to be fixed. Because sometimes you'll have all these powers, but if they've not been exercised or they've not been used in conjunction with another power, then it's just a power in paper.
True. Yeah, very much so. Good. Awesome. Now I'll come to the Wonder Woman of the organization. You may be wondering why I said Wonder Woman, because as the ICAC's director for proceeds of crime, that's a really big role to play. Dallas, just coming to you, when someone pictures proceeds of crime, I mean, gone are the days where robbery would be just, you go to someone, you put a gun, you get it, and that's it. That's the proceeds of crime. Now it's a little bit more slicker than that, very more complex. What is your role there at ICAC, and what is this thing called the proceeds of crime?
So the proceeds of crime basically are the assets that are stolen from the country. Anything that you obtain through your criminal conduct, the criminal conduct we're interested in obviously is corruption, is a proceed of crime. So what my job is to work with the investigators and identify that when they're doing their criminal investigation into a corruption offence, where's the money gone? So once the investigators have identified the criminal corruption offence and Grace has done her magic on finding where the money's gone, that's when I step in and I work with the PNGC and the Public Prosecutor's Office to bring applications under the Proceeds of Crime Act to get that money or those assets back. So the reason why the ICAC has a Proceeds of Crime unit is because all of those millions of kina that are going missing out there through the misappropriation of funds and the fraudulent government contracts and activities, at the moment, all of that money, even if that person is arrested and is jailed for their criminal conduct, the money is still out there and somebody is benefiting from that.
There's a tendency for people to get that sort of money, as we all know, and try to clean it. The term they say, they clean it, and how they clean it, they put it in a lot of innocence into that whole process.
So what you're talking about, we refer to as money laundering. And yes, that's exactly what happens. I commit an offence, I get those proceeds of crime, and then I have to do something with it in order to be able to use it. Because I can't just steal $1 million kina and go and buy a new house, because questions will be asked. How did you get the money? How did you buy the house? How did you pay for it? What we can do is look at a person's unexplained wealth. So if I know that you are a public servant earning 30,000 Kina a year and you're buying $1 million house, doesn't quite add up. So we can look behind the scenes to that. With the money laundering itself, that comes into play in a lot of different areas, not just in the corruption space, as you can imagine. So, drug dealing, kidnapping, all those sorts of horrible criminal offences that we don't touch. The money laundering can be really simple. It can be as simple as I steal some money and I put it in my husband's bank account. Or it can be really sophisticated. There can be corporate structures that have a number of different companies, and the money can be transferred around to all of these different places, so that when Grace's team gets the documents, it's a really hard task to then follow it all around to work out where it's all gone. Another way of doing it is you might have 1 million Kina and you put 10,000 here and 10,000 there and 10,000 there. When there are smaller amounts, the reporting requirements into FASU don't kick in. So you have those smaller amounts that make it difficult to trace as well. Gambling is another one. I take my ill-gotten 10,000 Kina into a casino or some kind of gambling endeavour, and I come out with winnings. So it's clean. Once it has been cleaned in that way, I can then use it legitimately. And once I've used it legitimately, it's back within the financial system. It's much harder then for that to be identified as a proceeds of crime. So we need to try and get it before it gets put back into the legitimate financial sector.
Yeah,
it's a tough job.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of trying to wrap my brain around it.
Sorry, I'll just pop in.
Yes,
I
please.
was going to say also, PNG presents a different challenge because it's also a cash economy.
Yeah.
And so when we're tracing money, if it just shows that there was a counter withdrawal, and many people at that level, they also know the reporting requirements. So if it's anything 10,000 and up, it gets flagged. So they can just do cash withdrawals of 9,000 or 9,999.
99, yeah.
So we can see there's something happening, but once they do the cash withdrawal and if they go distribute to their one talks, we have no coverage over that because it's no longer traceable. And that's where the public comes in. If you see people bringing stashes of cash or someone bringing an envelope, human source is also very important, human intelligence. Then we can try connect, because to prove these, you asked earlier, you're doing all these analysis of transactions, but what will become of it? The difficult part is that if you're going to the court criminal, it has to be proven beyond reasonable doubt. And remember, we're having powers that also infringes on people's human rights. We're going into people's personal bank statements.
Yeah.
You can tell a lot from bank statements. There's a lot of funny things I see, but you have to do it because there's a case. And it's not enough to just go by the numbers. You need corroborating evidence. And that's where the public can come in. Or if you work in a certain agency and you know that maybe your agency there's been regular lunch visits and someone keeps coming and dropping by an envelope. If you give us that kind of tip-off, and if we see the date, we can have reasonable suspicion that that date also corroborates with a counter withdrawal we saw, in conjunction with other evidence we need, like CCTV footage at the ATMs or information or teller logs from the banks. So there's a lot involved in proving that. But in PNG, the hardest is that it's a cash economy.
Yeah.
And so, as Dallas mentioned, if they try to layer it through purchasing property and all of that, most times people are smart. The legitimate income is where they will be purchasing properties. But if they come to the counter and say, oh, I won 9,000 at the pokies, the bank will take it in, but it might be an envelope they received. The bank can't query that. So there's also no coverage that we have over the pokies area to show that that was the receipt they won at the pokies. So in PNG, the biggest challenge is it's the cash. They're moving in cash.
The cash and the proof behind it.
And
because
the proof behind that.
for all our Facebook investigators out there, social media, there's always a tendency to see a particular Facebook group. Granted, they raise queries, etc., but it's just a lot of accusations being made out there. But your faceless pages, your faceless groups of, like in the press, the mainstream, I'll just give context for our viewers out there. For the press, the main thing is we can do a story, but we know we are liable for the story itself. My name is on it, my organization's name. You can sue us under the Defamation Act, etc., etc. Same with ICAC. You can be sued or you can be held accountable for an investigation that went south. And for everyone needs to understand that just seeing something on Facebook, that's just one part of it. It's just you reading with your eyes, but actually getting someone behind bars is another thing altogether. I'm just picking up from what you're saying. Do we know how much is being lost to corruption? I would assume you may have done some homework on this. I know the organization is just current, but there has been precedents of cases and how much money has been lost. Roughly, in an estimate, not officially, what would be the cost? Because people need to hear that this is costing them something.
Look, it is an estimate, and the reality is that we haven't prosecuted enough of these matters yet to get a specific quantified amount. But the estimate that we have is that 10% of government spending is lost to fraud, waste and error. That equates to between 2.5 and 3 billion kina. So we're not talking about thousands or millions, we're talking in the billions of kina. The corruption that is stealing that money directly is also impacting the enormous potential that PNG has for agriculture, tourism, fisheries, SMEs. The distortion of the financial markets is huge. It's enormous.
So we'll come to our last part of this conversation we're going to have. I think it's the most important one, to hearing everything that you've said, and thank you so much for having this podcast with us. And that's the one on reporting now.
Reporting to ICAC is a bit different. So if you report to ICAC, and just to take a step back, anybody can make a report to ICAC. You don't have to be a public servant, you don't have to be a leader. Leaders are under a special obligation to report corruption to the ICAC, but any person in Papua New Guinea can make that report. The way they make that report is protected. So they can come into the ICAC office in Wagani, at the central government office, and they can speak to somebody in person if that's what they want to do. If they do that, it's not out in the open, it's not on the betel nut market out the front, it's within the office and it's contained. So nobody's watching you give your report to the ICAC staff. If you're out in the provinces, not quite so easy to get to the office in Waigani, there are other options. There is a phone number that you can call and you can make a report over the phone. And we'll provide that phone number to you. We also have our website. On the website, there is a form and you can provide your complaint in writing using that form, and there is an email address that you can send that through to. So there's no reason for anyone to think that in order to make a complaint to ICAC, they have to front up and put themselves at risk. If you ask for your details to be kept confidential, there is an obligation on every commission officer who works for the ICAC to keep that confidence. There is, we can't divulge your details to anybody outside the specific team that are working on your complaint. So, for example, if I was working with the investigators on a particular matter and Grace was not within that team, she was working on something else, I'm not even allowed to talk to Grace about your details. So that confidence is kept within the Commission by the Commission officers, both as an institution and individually.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Before I go to my call for action, Acting Commissioner, you can make that message to everyone. I also wanted to talk about, just quickly, 50 days leading up to the program that we had, 50 days of activism, right? What's going to happen? What's going to happen on the actual December 9th that people should look forward to, if you guys could?
So the whole idea behind all of this is to get everyone, before we get there, at least we educate the public. And this is one of such things that we're doing now. That is to educate the public so that, they can be able to understand, the evils of corruption and how they can help us in that fight. And the activities on the 9th of December is like we create invitations to hopefully everyone must make it a business. Find a 9th of December is a special day for all of us.
What kind of penalties? This is the part where you need to scare people. What kind of punishment is there for, I mean, within ICAC, or is it within certain legislations that you try to enforce? What kind of punishment are some of these potential criminals out there gonna face when they make the wrong move, Acting Commissioner?
Yeah. When you look at the design of the organic law, the offenses are not written in the organic law.
Okay.
In actual fact, the offenses are written in the criminal code. So all the penalties under the criminal code, kind of, that's the type of penalty that you get. So, for example, if someone misappropriates money and ICAC conducts investigation, then we're going to charge them not under the organic law, but the organic law gives us the mandate to investigate corrupt conduct, and misappropriation is one such corrupt conduct. So the offense is written in the criminal code. So you will charge that person under the criminal code, under that provision, and the penalty under the provision applies.
Okay, thank you. So, second last one. Is ICAC a paper tiger?
We are not, and I must assure everybody that ICAC is, we're not a paper tiger. We're not defunct, as many people tend to think. We are determined to ensure that we take the lead seriously in the fight against corruption. Having said that, we cannot do it alone. We need every hands on deck, every citizen, development partners, civil societies, communities need to support us, to rally behind us, that we can be able to have an impact. Of course, corruption is here to stay. Make no mistake about that. But hopefully we can be able to minimize it to a level where we can be able to manage it. And in doing so, we need everyone to support us to be able to get to that extent.
And thank you so much, ladies, for being around. Wonder Woman and Forensics CSI. That comes to the end of our podcast, and I thank you all for being online with us. If you stayed for the whole thing, fit line. If you didn't, you can still come back and watch on our podcast, Post-Courier Online. Subscribe, like all our pages, our socials, and thank you so much. It's a privilege for us as Post-Courier Online to have this conversation, and also Post-Courier as an organization that has been here since 1969. So thank you so much, Acting Commissioner and your deputies, Tyler and Grace.